Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for a squat and deadlift day, and we did squats and deadlifts today. So let's hop over to it. One of the big changes I did make today, I did calf work. I believe it's been at least 20 years since I've done calf work. I could be wrong. I may have done a few sets or something when I was in the UK, but I don't specifically remember having done any. All right, so we started the day off with high bar squats, and unlike the last workout, I tried to make sure that I sank all of these, because that second set I got real lazy last time. This time I wanted all the sets to be quality. These were very fatiguing, and I know this is only 315. Just the other day when I was still going a little bit heavy, you guys watched me do a 5-rep set like this, beltless with 405. Again, high bar, no belt, all that. These are surprisingly hard, and it's just because they're so taxing. And I've noticed, especially with no belt, especially sinking it deep, trying to actually focus on every rep, instead of just getting through the set, I'm trying to actually get quality reps. 10s are very difficult. They're very difficult with 315 for me. But again, I'm also in a calorie deficit, also cutting could be a factor. But all of it adds up. It's the fact that I'm going below parallel, the fact that I am not using a belt, doing high bar, all these things. Again, this is difficult, but the thing is, my quads were lit, and that's the most important take home here. This hammered my quads. My quads were on fire just from this. Now, is this to say this is all I will ever need for quads? No, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think eventually I'd like to work, another quad exercise in addition to the squats. Again, over time, I'm going to get further into this cut. I feel like at this point, because again, I neglected squatting and I'm really doing it again, and I'm going deep now, doing a more quad dominant version. I feel like my quads are starting to come back. They will come back up, and I may not need to add a second exercise yet. However, eventually, again, because I've told you guys for a while, I'm going to actually, for the first real time, take physique stuff seriously. And I think this is really the first serious attempt where I said, look, I'm going to stick through the cut. I'm going to do forearm work, really strict long range of motion curls. I'm doing all that stuff now. And it's coming along. I'm getting leaner, getting bigger in certain places. And I feel like we can't see it as much on the lower days. I feel like once I got a little bit of pump in the upper, stuff stands out more, which I think, again, maybe it's just my body dysmorphia telling me that, but I always feel like in the lower days I look smaller, right? I look smaller in the footage and the pictures. But again, it could be my body dysmorphia. We all suffer from it. But yeah, so in accordance with all that, I'm trying to keep the reps pretty high. We're trying to focus on quality sets. But man, these 10s on squats, they're tough for me. I'm not gonna lie, it's just pretty tough. To me, this is harder than cranking out some heavy work. And it's the same when I get to the deadlifts. I decided, let's go back and work just our deadlifts back in. But I'm like, let's do it with a stiff bar. Let's do it beltless, right? And put 405 on. I'm like, let me just see what I can do. Just ramp a nice quality set till I get real tired. 12 reps was tough. Now, what was it, over a year ago, I did with a deadlift bar and a belt. You guys saw me do 11 with 500. This felt just as hard. This was just as fatiguing. So 95 pounds lighter with a stiff bar and no belt is pretty tough. Now, I also made sure rep quality. What was my goal on this? Full resets, tightness. Wanted to lock every rep. No rushing it. Wanted to take my time. And a few of those reps that I'm looking from this front angle, I'm like, I could have locked those a little harder. At the end, I made sure I did, but, I felt like I was doing it, but that's the thing. When we start messing with rep work, our brain will mess with us. So I think that needs to be something I work on as I do these again. If I'm going to rep deadlifts, I need them to be correct. No strongman bullshit like those guys clown around and hitch and don't even lock out and wear figure 8 straps and suits. All right, that's nonsense. All right, I need to use the deadlift to build quality muscle. And that means range of motion matters. It needs to be good, solid, strict reps. So I was happy with the performance, the number there. I was happy with how I felt, but in retrospect, looking at it, the reps were good other than some of those reps needed a firmer lockout. Okay, and I'll own that. But man, that was fatiguing. All right, calf raises, I haven't done these in 20 years. Oh my God. So I just put 135 on the bar. I'm like, let me try to see if I can get on these plates, get a full stretch at the bottom. The stretch is the main thing. I mean, you look at the calf muscles and how they grow, the stretch is overwhelmingly the most important part. Okay? So I tried to do these with a full range of motion. And it was hard to actually balance even on these 2.5-inch plates, trying to get that stretch. It was a little bit tricky. I wish I threw away some of those old Rogue safety arms I tossed on. Those would have been really good to lay one of those crossways underneath those others and to do these calf raises on. I think it would have been helpful. But these burned. You guys can see I've already got a calf pump there. You know, people have always asked me for years, what do I do for my calves? And I'm like, I don't, guys. I mean, squatting and conditioning work. I've always had big calves. I've always had lean calves. I have ripped calves even if I'm bad enough to have a belly. So that being said, I'm curious what will happen if I just throw in some actual real calf work. Right? They're probably going to blow up. Now, what's part of the reason of this? Do I really need this for quote unquote aesthetics or look? No, I already have jack calves. But if I add muscle to my calves, will it make my cutting easier? Ooh. I mean, think of the metabolic changes just walking around. You add more muscle to your calves. Burn through more calories just walking. I think it'll make cutting. I think it'll make cutting easier. It's not that much extra work, right? Not that much extra work to just throw in and do these. So, you know, might as well. Now, this did make my glute ham raises hard. You know, some people say, why didn't you do the glute ham raises first? Because I get a little worried of my calves cramping. I'm not going to lie. And I've already done deadlifts. Deadlifts really fatigue my glute ham raises. Those high rep deadlifts tend to do that. So, again, the glute ham raises are the only thing I think that suffered a little bit. My hamstrings were also just shot. It's a lot of hamstring work. But I'm going to keep hammering posterior chain. I'm going to just focus on squats, calves, posterior chain. So I wanted to make sure, because I'm not doing that much deadlift volume, I'm like, let me do glute ham raises and then finish off with a high rep set of reverse hypers. By the time I got to the reverse hypers, I realized my posterior chain was just really beat up from that high rep deadlift set. It took a lot out of me because I couldn't do as many reps on these today. Now, or on the reverse hyper. But I think it's because, again, the shorter breaks going near the end, and again, this is a lot of fatigue accumulated. You know, I feel like between doing the high rep deadlifts and then doing those calf raises, we accumulated a lot of fatigue in the low body. So what I also did here is I'm supersetting the glute ham raises with the hanging leg raises, which I'm doing these now hanging. Notice I'm not using slings. My shoulder health, my grip, it all just ties in, and I think it'll help with that. This will help with more complete development. Okay, but I want to keep the hanging leg raises in because I feel like that adds to, you know, my whole shoulder health thing. And I do feel like, again, I'm definitely getting leaner. That loose skin, the fat all in the loose skin around the waistline is still there. So when people say, I've had a bunch of people say, you don't have that much weight left to use. What are you talking about? But I've got body fat there, and that's where it will eventually come from. Does that make sense, guys? So since I feel like that's starting to get smaller, I feel like that's where the majority of the pounds. So probably, you know, that next 5 pounds I lose, I think the lion's share of it is probably going to come from that area. And you figure 7 pounds of fat is about 1 gallon. You know? So again, we'll just keep tightening that up as I go. I'm going to just keep focusing on getting leaner. All right? And I think I'm going to do the protein overfeeding indefinitely, even if I reach a target body weight, just to try to recomposition a little bit. So again, yeah, I'm really doing this. And a lot of people will say things like, oh, you know, you've tried. No, but I haven't really, because it always came back to powerlifting. It always came back to, oh, I feel like I'm losing strength. I can't keep cutting. And now I've prepared myself for the fact that I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on gaining muscle everywhere, to the point where we're doing really strict long range of motion curls. We're training our forearms. We're training our calves. At that point, I'm taking it quite serious. But it's been a step-by-step thing to get there. But I'm kind of looking forward to just kind of a little bit of change in goals. Get jacked, get ripped, and then go back and work those big three a little bit again for heavier weight. Let's see where we're at. But ultimately, that's the thing. I'm closing in on 50. What happens when I get to 50? What happens if I'm already all the way down to 200 pounds in lean? I don't know, man. I think my dots, especially my age-adjusted dots, will be crazy good if I walk back in and step on a powerlifting platform. It's how you have to look at it, right? It's how you have to look at it. But at the end of the day, again, I feel like I'm a little flatter today too. That's what happens after those upper days. I think that's part of it also. I think that's part of it also. I've got a pump in the upper body on those days, plus that I've depleted them and they haven't fully recovered from all of that. Probably factors. But a good workout. This was kind of tiring. I'm not going to lie, guys. This was fairly fatiguing workout for me, because especially I'm not used to that, throwing the calf work in and everything, not used to really high rep deadlift sets. So again, good training response though. So I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.